Good evening. My name is Christina Tobich, and I'm with the Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy. I'm very excited to welcome you all tonight to our workshop, Getting to Know the Trees of Brooklyn. Now, a little bit more about Evelyn Manlove. She has been playing a role in shaping and maintaining the landscape at Brooklyn Bridge Park ever since joining the horticulture department as a seasonal gardener back in 2015. And now stepping into the role of horticulturist back in 2019, Evelyn works closely with every member of the horticulture staff to ensure that the horticulture best practices are upheld and in line with the park's mission for sustainability, fostering urban ecology, and creating a beautiful place of respite for all New Yorkers. She is an NOFA certified organic land care professional and holds a certificate in horticulture from Brooklyn Botanic Garden and a certificate in botany from New York Botanical Garden. Prior to the park, she worked in residential and interior landscaping industries. And with that, I'll hand it over to Evelyn. We are definitely in for an educational treat tonight.
Thank you for that introduction. With that, I'm just going to share my screen and get right into it. Okay, I think that when many people think of parks, that trees are one of the first things that come to mind. The shade that they provide, their placement in the landscape, and the structure of their overall canopy has a lot to do with shaping the character of a park and shaping the experience of what it's like to be in that space. At Brooklyn Bridge Park, we have more than 3,000 trees planted at this point. And caring for the establishment of those trees is a big part of my job and the jobs of my colleagues on the horticulture team. As Brooklyn Bridge Park is, of course, a young park, we have many young trees, which is very exciting to work with them in terms of formative pruning that will direct and guide their overall form and the character that they take on as they grow, hopefully for a long time in the park. When I started at the park in 2015, as was mentioned, I had been working in various aspects of horticulture for some time, but trees weren't really my focus prior to that. And I've really learned a lot since I've been at the park. I've had the opportunity to work with some of the best professionals in tree care in the New York City area. And I've really noticed as that my personal path has progressed that even as I've gotten to know just a little bit more about the trees, that my experience of encountering them has been really enriched. And that's what I hope to share with people tonight, is just giving folks a little more to recognize when they encounter trees that hopefully will enrich their experience. So I want to start with a very important group of trees, the oaks.
Evelyn, I'm just going to hop in for a second because we can't see your slides. I'm not sure if you're showing us slides yet, but just wanted to let you know that we don't see them.
Okay, great. I'm just on my second slide, but I am in full screen mode. So let's figure out why that is. Let me go out of full screen mode. Maybe I forgot to press the screen share button. Could be. Okay, let's see, share screen. How about this? This is probably going to work better now.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great.
Maybe the share in the right corner, or the present, yeah. I think present is the one.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's my introduction slide. But we're moving on to the oaks. And I think that I notice when I speak to the gardeners in the park and other landscape land care professionals that there's a certain reverence with which people speak about oaks, and there's good reason for that. They are a very important group of plants, particularly in the region where we live. And since the demise of the American chestnut in the early 20th century, the oaks have become the dominant forest species in the northeastern forests. And as such, they're what we call a keystone species or an ecosystem engineer. And what that means is that the oaks basically shape the environment around them in a number of ways. And one of the most important ways is by being essentially the center of forest ecosystems. The acorns, the nuts provided by oaks, are a key source of forage for mammals, and they provide nesting cavities for birds. And also oaks are a host plant species for 534 species of lepidopterans. That's butterflies and moths. And so how that ties into the food chain also is that that means there's a lot of caterpillars on oaks. That means a lot of birds come to eat the caterpillars. Bigger birds come to eat those birds, and so forth. There is also a historical human connection with oaks. Whereas people don't often think of acorns as food, but indigenous populations in various parts of the world made food from oaks, and potentially our ancestors would have sought shelter from predators in oaks. If you're interested in those sort of things, there's an excellent book that I recommend by Bill Logan called Oak, the Frame of Civilization. In the park, we have 17 species of oaks plus 3 hybrids. So that's a lot, and I'm not going to talk about any of them, all of them, I mean. And the truth is, oaks are a bit of they're a bit of a daunting and complicated group to get to know. But I'm going to provide some general insights that I hope will get people on their journey to start looking at oaks and other trees and recognizing them. So the oaks are divided into 2 groups in general. There's the red oak group and the white oak group. And the leaf tips are on the red oak group are pointy, and the tips on the white oak group are smooth or rounded. We call those tips lobes, is the botanical term. Throughout this talk, I will mention botanical names, and for those that are interested, and if you're not, just let that roll on by you and pay attention to the rest. So let's see here. One thing to look for when you're identifying a tree in the winter, particularly oaks, as you see these leaves are on the ground, that's always a good place to start, is looking for leaves on the ground if they're not on the tree. But of course, if you're in say particularly a forest or any area with a lot of trees, that can be a bit confusing. But another thing to look for is the buds on the trees, and On the left, we have the buds of a tree in the white oak group that are tend to be rounded, whereas on the right is the bud of a tree in the red oak group that tend to be pointy, similar, just like the leaves, round, white, pointy, red. So these are some of the these are just the oaks in those groups that we're going to talk a little bit about quickly. The red oaks, northern red oak, Quarkus rubra, pin oak, Corcus palustris, and willow oak, Quarkus velos. And the white oaks, we're going to talk briefly about swamp white oak, Quarkus bicolor, white oak, Quarkus alba, and the chestnut oaks, Quarkus montana and Quarkus michoii. Notice there's two species there, and they're so similar that I'm going to treat them as the same plant. In that case, their difference is mostly in the habitat in which they grow. So this is, again, you see the pointy, this is the bud of Quarkus rubra. But the thing that I wanted to point out is that this is a great feature for identifying any oak, is that the buds are in clusters at the end of the branch. So if you see a tree, you don't know what it is, it has no leaves on it, you look at the end of the branch, if the buds are in a cluster like this, there's a good chance that it's an oak. This is just in general some of the things to look at for identifying oaks, and really things that you want to look for looking at most trees in general to try to get a sense of what they are. You want to look at the leaves, look at the buds, look at the acorns, or in the case of other trees, the fruit, whatever type of fruits or seeds that they have, the bark, and the overall form. And it's always important, no matter which of those things that you're looking at, be it the leaves or the buds, to look at multiple examples. You never just want to look at a single leaf or a single bud and try to figure out what it is that you're looking at, because there's so much variability in nature that you're likely to get yourself off to the wrong start that way. So for the red oaks, the two that I want to talk about that are the most similar, and these are well represented in the park, are pin oak and red oak. And so between these points I said are the lobes, the area between the points is called the sinuses of the leaf. And you can see that the pin oak has very deep sinuses, whereas the red oak tends to have more shallow sinuses and a broader area between the sinuses. So this image I picked because it gives a very good example of those differences. But you will find when you're looking in nature that those differences are not always as dramatic, and it can be confusing if you're just looking at the leaves. So another great way to distinguish between pin oak and red oak is to look at the tree's overall form. The form of the pin oak tends to have very, very many small, dense branches, and it tends to take on an overall pyramidal shape. One of my favorite things to know and to note about the shape of the form of the pin oak is that they often take on this shape where the lower branches slope gently down, the middle branches are close to lateral, and then above that, the branches gently ascend towards a point. Quarkus rubra, and this is a little bit harder to really get the sense of in these photos, but Quarkus rubra tends to have fewer branches that are much heftier and stout and tend to sprawl out, and they're very typically ascending. So but the one of the main things to really notice is the difference between the density of the branching. So the last red oak that I want to talk about is the willow oak, Quarkus phellos. And now the other oaks that we just looked at it's pretty easy to tell right off the bat that they're oaks, because most people are pretty familiar with that classic oak leaf shape. But when you look at the willow oak, which is another tree that's featured sporadically through the park, you look at these leaves and they don't give you oak. They're looking like a willow, but it doesn't make sense. You really want to look at those, look for the buds. And here you see the buds on the willow oak are in that end cluster. And then when you see that, you know that, oh, this must be an oak group. Let's look at the differences between white oak, Quercus alba, and swamp white oak, Quercus bicolor. Now the white oaks, again, the Quercus alba tends to have these very, very deep and accentuated sinuses between the lobes, whereas Quercus bicolor tends to have shallower sinuses with a broader leaf. But again, when you're in nature, and say if you compare this leaf to the Quercus alba leaf on the left to the swamp white, it looks very different, but the one on the right doesn't look as different. So again, you want to look for a tree you're actually looking at. And in this case, if you can find the acorns, that's a really good way to distinguish. Whereas you can see, so if you can, once you see that difference in the acorns, then that really, it can still look a little bit like Quercus bicolor, and it has these very pretty, it tends to form these very angular shaped fissures in the bark, as you can see this sort of accentuated triangle shape. So I think that's a really interesting feature to look for in the chestnut oak. And I wanted to mention herbivory on oaks, because if you take anything from this talk and you start looking more closely at oak trees, you will be more than likely to see things living on oak trees and things eating oak trees. And that goes back to what I said earlier about oak trees being a keystone plant in the ecosystem and the center of the food chain. So it is it's natural that when you find oaks, that you'll find things eating them and living on them. These holes in these oak leaves were caused by a shot hole leaf miner, you know, this a shot hole leaf miner in certain circumstances could become problematic, but it's not necessarily. It's you know, it's normal for things to feed on oaks and other plants in the landscape. So the practice that we observe in horticulture at the park, when we observe herbivory or something that looks like a level of disease that's affecting a plant, is we look to see how dramatic it is, how widespread it is, and watch it over time to see if the situation resolves itself naturally, which is what would normally happen in a balanced ecosystem, with most when it's an interaction between organisms that are both from that ecosystem. There is at this time a significant concern in regard to the health of oaks that we are very concerned about, and that I would encourage people to look out for. And that is a disease that's emerging in our area called oak wilt. And oak wilt is caused by a fungus that is transmitted from oak to oak by a beetle. And the beetle is very attracted to freshly cut or damaged oaks. And for that reason, we don't prune oaks during the active life cycle of the beetles. We reserve pruning oaks strictly for winter and try to avoid any damage to them as much as we can for that reason. But I just wanted to put this on the radar because it really is something to look out for. It is a disease of major concern, and these are the signs that you would see if you encountered it. Browning out happening in a part of the tree, mostly starting in the upper crown, and leaves with this sort of mottled discoloration, often with this sort of dark line between a browned out part and a green part. Just to mention that. And so moving on to some other really great park trees, and this one is featured all over Brooklyn Bridge Park and throughout the city, is the honey locust, Ditcio tricanthos. Now, Ditcio tricanthos is pretty easy to recognize for its very large compound leaves. Now you might look at this tree and say, Evelyn, what are you talking about? That has really small leaves. But this is a single leaf of a honey locust. It's a compound leaf that is comprised of a rachis and many leaflets. So it's actually quite a large leaf with many small leaflets. And one great way to, there's a few trees with that you'll encounter regularly and throughout the park with compound leaves of this type. And one great way to recognize a honey locust is by looking at the bark. And the bark of honey locust when it's young tends to be relatively smooth with horizontal lenticels. Like we see on this specimen on the right. And as the trees mature and develop into their middle age, really, the bark begins to fissure in long strips that look like it's peeling off the tree. It looks like almost the trees are falling apart, but that's just the way that they grow. And you can usually still see sections of the lenticel bark in between. And it tends to be this grayish brown with a reddish undercast. The 1 BBP plaza between Pier 5 and Pier 6 is a really great place to observe this right now, because the trees there that were all planted at the same time are at various stages of reaching this point in maturity, where some of them are still quite smooth and some of them are developing the fissured bark. Another great way to recognize a honey locust, particularly in the winter, when you look up at its branching, is this zigzag pattern. The branches, particularly when they're small, you can really see this this change of angles between the bud points, and it's pretty easy to recognize once you start looking for it. Honey locust is such a widely planted tree in the park and in the city because it is extremely well adaptable to urban conditions. It's a tree that'll just take abuse and just keep on growing, which makes it very well suited for our difficult human environments. One thing that I think is interesting to know about honey locust is that almost all of the trees that you see are a cultivar or a variety of honey locust that is selected for its thornlessness, because typically honey locust trees grow these really gnarly thorns that are fairly off-putting, and people tend to not want to have that in their tree pit. So all the honey locusts that are widely planted are a cultivar or variety that's selected for thornlessness. Another locust that grows in the park is the black locust. So here again, I want to illustrate the trees that are similar and the things that make them different, to show you things to look for that that will help you distinguish between trees. So this is a comparison of the leaf of honey locust and black locust, and you can see that the leaflets are a different shape. The black locust leaflets are rounder and larger, but a really particular difference between these two trees is that the black locust has a terminal leaflet, and the honey locust does not. The leaflets are symmetrical all the way down the rachis. Another difference is the thorns. Black locust also has thorns, but as opposed to those really large branch thorns that are on honey locust, the black locust has much smaller thorns that only occur on certain parts of the tree, mostly around the base and the base of branches. And so probably the easiest tree to mistake for a honey locust is the Japanese scholar tree, Stypnolobian Japonicum. And this is featured in a number of places in the park, around a number of entrances, particularly Pier 1 entrance. And one of the big tip-offs that you're looking at this tree is it maintains well into its growth this much smoother bark that has a very pale tan, yellowy looking appearance. So if you think maybe you're seeing a honey locust, when they leaf out, the leaves are really very similar. But it just doesn't look like it's the wrong color. It's more than likely a Japanese scholar tree, Stypnolobian Japonicum. And a good way to really get a good sense of that is to look at these small branches, and the small branches on the Japanese scholar are green with these very prominent corky lenticels. So those green branches really give it away. Now these are a really fun, this is a really fun group of trees to talk about, the bald cypress and the dawn redwoods. And these trees look so much alike that you might think, Evelyn, how are you going to tell me how to tell these apart? No way. Taxodium is, the bald cypress is native to the United States, whereas the dawn redwood, Metasequoia, is from Asia. And to tell you the truth, if you're only looking at one of them in an isolated circumstance, it can be pretty confusing to tell them apart. But this is a great example here at Pier 1 Vale Lawn down by the water, where the two are planted closely together, and you can compare them. You can compare them at the same time. So this is how you do it. The Metasequoia on its has opposite needle arrangement. You can see that the needles are attached directly across from each other, whereas the Taxodium has an alternate needle arrangement. And as you look at the needle attachments, you can really see them just lace in on one side or the other. It is a small detail, and you do have to look closely to notice it. And then there are some other features, like the tips are round on the Metasequoia versus pointy tips on the Taxodium. But another fun way that you can also often observe to get a good sense of the difference is often on the bald cypress, the taxodium, you'll see these Cypress twig gulls, and this is from a little midge that basically lays its eggs on the needle tips of the taxodium, and it forms these balls that look like little spitballs almost on the ends of the branches. And it's very common to see this on taxodiums. And this is another one of those things that it's part of a natural relationship. We see it happening, and it doesn't hurt the tree too much. So that's just part of what's happening in the environment. But it is distinct to the taxodiums. And everyone always wants to know, what is that tree in bloom? And right now, the eastern redbud is really putting on quite a show. This is one of the trees that flowers before it puts on leaves. Many trees do utilize that strategy. Also, of course, the Japanese flowering cherries are just coming to the end of their flowering time, and they'll soon be putting on their leaves. But the redbuds in the park are still going strong and putting on quite a show. And I think you can see why they're called redbuds, because these little tiny, just lovely red flowers. And then they put on their leaves, and for the rest of the year, they just treat us with these lovely heart-shaped leaves. This is one of our native trees that is a small to mid-sized understory tree that tends to have a sprawling kind of open habit. And it's really just a nice addition to the park and to any landscape. One tree in the sporadic in the park that could be confused with Cercis canadensis, the redbud, is the Katsura tree. Katsura trees are also an Asian tree, and you can see that the leaf margins, what we call the edge of the leaf, are scalloped on the Katsura, which is an easy way to distinguish them. And it's harder to make out in these pictures, but I always feel like the venation in the Katsura tree leaf just really stands out, and that always helps me distinguish them. Katsura gets a very lovely fall color, and it has a very interesting, unique quality that at the time when the leaves change, that the chemistry produces a sweet smell that people have often described as sort of brown sugar-like. It's a really interesting and pleasant feature of the Katsura. And I couldn't talk about the trees in the park without talking about the eastern cottonwood, Populus deltoides. This is our one senior tree in the park, and the best estimates are that the cottonwood, this is of course out by Jane's Carousel and EFF, or veteran tree I meant to say, is the best estimates are that it's around 80 years old, maybe 80 to 90, and which makes it very young for a veteran tree. So obviously the cottonwood is a very fast-growing tree, and it is native to the area. And I don't know if anyone really knows if this tree was planted in its location or if it just grew there. It obviously long predates Brooklyn Bridge Park and is in the area that was previously a state park. But in any case, it is growing in its habitat correct environment. If you travel up and down the Hudson, you will see these trees in similar sites along the water. It's just where they like to be, and they always tend to develop this very open, sprawling form in their maturity. Now these pictures are this is from today or yesterday. The cottonwood is just opening up its leaves, and they haven't even fully developed chlorophyll yet. That's the reason for the yellowish color. It's not fall, this is spring for sure. But this leaf, even now as it's just opened up within the past day or so, is such a totally distinct identification feature for the cottonwood. It has this very flat base attached to the stem, and then before it reaches the extremity, it begins the scalloped pattern with a very arrow shaped, arrow to heart shaped leaf, and with a long tip that often curves to the side, just as you see here. And even the old leaves from fall in the leaf litter on the ground retain that characteristic. Very easy to tell that's cottonwood. Cottonwoods also flower before they put on leaves. They were flowering about a month ago, and so within the past few weeks, these catkins, which are the cottonwood flowers, were littered all over the ground around it. And here on the right, on a different area of the park, we have the baby cottonwood. This is over by the wetlands, and this is its appearance when it's just getting started. So that went got through that in pretty good time. We'll see if we have any questions. That's all the trees I was going to talk about today, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Evelyn. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Haley McClanahan. I'm a lead educator and animal care specialist with the Conservancy. So we are now going to start our question and answer portion. And I want to just say thank you again to Evelyn. That was so informative. I learned a lot. So if you feel comfortable, you're welcome to turn your cameras on and ask our speaker a question directly. We also are monitoring the chat, so I can field those questions from there. If you do want to answer in person, if you want to use the raise hand feature on Zoom, we can get to you in an orderly fashion. And if you're on YouTube, we're also monitoring questions there, although there is a delay. So just so you know. Let's see. I can start with one question here from Christina. Actually, she started off. So at what age do oak trees begin to produce acorns? Do we see acorns on all the oak tree varieties in the park? Also, same question for pine cones, I guess.
Okay, that's a very good question about oaks. And the answer is no, they don't begin to produce acorns right away. Oaks need to reach a certain stage in their maturity before they do begin to produce acorns. And I'm pretty sure that that varies by species, and I can't say exactly how long that would be. Given the age of the trees in the park, we do see them producing acorns, and they're probably, a lot of the trees are between 10 to 15 years old. They may have been 5 years or older when they were planted 10 years ago. And I do think it's probably about 5 years before most oaks start to produce acorns. And then there's also there's something that oaks have what's called a mast year, where some years they produce a lot of acorns and some years they don't produce many at all. Pine cones, I'm not really sure, to be honest.
Great, thanks, awesome, good to know. Okay, let's see from the chat. Richard Day asked, what is the long-term plan for the oaks? I know the park has pretty shallow soil.
That's a very good question. The depths of soil in the park really vary depending on the area. Whereas say on Pier 1, where there is where the pier basically goes down to through the water entirely, it's not elevated on the pilings. There's much more soil depth, and so the trees have more room for root growth there. It is really hard to say. In fact, a lot of trees, including oaks, will tend to grow roots outward more so than down. So it is quite possible that that many of the trees will be able to sustain themselves long term in the shallow soil depths that are present in the park. But to be honest, some of that is really yet to be determined. And it's something that we pay a lot of close attention to.
Awesome, yeah, so we'll be checking, see if anybody is gonna be adapting to the environment there. Okay, what percentage of the trees were planted in the park and what percentage were already there? That's from Colleen Olson.
Well, almost all of them were planted. The Cottonwood is one very obvious exception, and there may be a couple debatably desirable other trees in coastal areas that may have been there, that were possibly there before the park. But I guess another way of looking at that is that at this point, particularly in the more established areas of the park, like say Pier 1 and Sumac Path, we have a lot of tree regeneration. In other words, acorns have seeded in, given rise to new trees that have grown on the site. So there is a future generation of trees that were born and raised in Brooklyn Bridge Park, and we certainly give very special attention to nurturing those trees where we can. But I would say that the percentage of planted versus non-planted trees at this point is at least 95% planted.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Can you describe the female flowers of the Cottonwood? That's from Georgia Silvera Siemens.
So the like I showed in the picture, the flowers of the Cottonwood are in the form of catkins, which is which is a long drooping. I think it would be called a raceme with many small flowers. And I actually don't know. That's probably a good point if cottonwoods are dioecious. And like having male and female flowers. I wouldn't be able to pick out the difference between the male and female flowers. And then one thing that I did want to find a slide for that I didn't find a picture is the seeds of the cottonwood are the reason why it's called cottonwood, because they are they're billowy, fluffy seeds that will just coat the ground in masses of white.
Interesting. All right, I'll have to look that one up. Okay, someone's asking about the new section. Will there be any new tree species in the Emily Roebling section of the park that's being developed, from Dan?
That's a very good question. I haven't seen a tree list for that section yet, so I don't know. I have a feeling that we're probably going to see like a list of like greatest hits, like most popular players in the park, but you never know if the designers will throw in a curveball.
All right, we'll have to wait and see on that one. Yeah. Coming in December or January, right? So
yeah,
rise out. Okay, so Dale asks, are there specific birds attracted to specific trees? If so, do you know which birds are attracted to which trees? Ooh, this would have been a good question for Heather. Maybe Heather, I know she's watching, maybe she can answer.
Yeah, totally. And Heather definitely knows more about that than I do. I would say yes, for sure, but birds aren't my area of expertise.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that one either. Okay. Oh yeah, she said warblers love the catalpas and oaks. Okay.
Nice.
For those. And I imagine the age of the trees also play into which birds like which ones too. So as they get,
and I would say definitely the types of fruit or seeds that they produce. Like I definitely see a lot of birds in our Amelanchier trees, which produce a lot of berries, and I see a lot of robins in them.
Yeah, I know Heather said when we were walking with her once that the birds seem to really love the veil area and the shade and the cover that specific area in those trees. There's pine trees down there, so maybe they like those and the stuff that falls on them. I'm not sure.
And so another reason why birds would love both catalpas and oaks is that those trees also attract a lot of insects, and birds eat a lot of insects.
Yeah, true. Okay, here's some interesting questions. I think maybe Lana asked this one earlier. Is it true that most trees are male? Most city trees are male, and how does this affect the urban tree ecology?
So certainly, like ginkgo trees are selected to be males because the females produce fruit that creates that stinky mess on sidewalks that people don't like, and certainly like a lot of other trees that might produce fruit, like it's not desirable, say if you have a pear tree growing on a street, to have pears dropping in the street. So the reality is that a lot of trees that find their way into cultivation and end up being street trees are often grafted. Like that's the same with the thornless honey locusts. To be able to reliably get that thornless result, it's likely that those trees are often grafted, and what that means is that they are all genetically the same. For urban ecology, it's definitely not ideal because there's no genetic diversity. That's an area, particularly with the oaks in the park, or any plant that we introduce in the park as the horticulture team. We try to have genetic diversity in that material.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite parts about what you guys do. Okay, Rebecca wants to know what your favorite park trees are.
That's really hard. I feel like that changes all the time. I've really been into the taxodiums actually lately, and I don't know. I think I would be interested in seeing American sycamore be more of a park tree and more of a presence in the park, which that tree was just introduced on the Pier 3 outboard. Yeah, I'll go with that for now.
Awesome. Okay, what insects have the biggest impact on tree health in Brooklyn Ridge Park?
Which insect? So one of the more problematic things that we find is sometimes boring insects, like beetles that burrow into the trees and tunnel through the vascular tissues. Those can really be a concern. We had some oaks that we had to coppice or remove a couple years ago because of borers. I mean, there's always a lot of things happening, but you know, that's again where hopefully we see that it can balance out naturally in the environment. We have had in the past there was a big problem with a scale insect called obscure scale that had affected a lot of the red oaks in the park, and there was previously big efforts to try to remediate that with physical removal, but we ultimately found that the parasitic wasps that were active in the park seemed to effectively manage that population.
Awesome. Kind of taking care of, if you have pests, then you might have
a beneficial
of that eventually.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So let me see if there's anything else. Oh, someone asked something about soil. Well, we did cover soil depth, but someone was asking about specific, the man-made soil in the park, if that affects trees in any way.
Yeah, that is another really not well understood and yet to be seen factor. And well, certainly one thing that we can say does have an effect on the trees is that the man-made soils, when they come in, that they lack the biology that would be happening in a normal soil, and it takes a really long time to get that cycle of soil life happening, where there are you know, the right fungal and bacterial components and microarthropods to have the soil food web happening. And that, of course, also includes the mycorrhizal connections that trees and plants depend on. So yeah, it definitely affects some trees and plants more than others, and that's something that we've seen, that some things are a lot more difficult to grow in the man-made soils. And then there's also in many areas of the park where there are slopes, there are basically plastic fibers that are incorporated into the soil called geofiber, which is, in theory, I believe, a biodegradable plastic, but it is there to, it's put there to prevent erosion and to stabilize slopes. But it definitely gets all tangled up in the roots of the trees and plants that grow there. And that's another big area in terms of the park design where the impact is really hard to quantify.
Interesting. Yeah, so we're going to have to continue to study all these things.
Yeah, exactly.
As the park develops. Awesome. All right, well, we'll just finish up with a few more. So Nan Kramer is asking, are there any London plane trees? I can answer that question. There are tons of London plane trees in the park, just like everywhere else in the city.
Yeah, I really wanted to get London plane into my presentation, but I kind of ran out of time. And I really wanted also to compare it to the American sycamore, because London plane is a hybrid cross between the American sycamore and Chinese sycamore, and so they're both similar and different.
Awesome.
If we do another talk, I'll definitely talk about
Keep
that.
your eye out for those 3 stem ones along Pier 1. I can tell you
exactly.
There. All right, let's see. Melinda's asking if there is a tree map of the park, and maybe this is where we will plug the new plant guide being developed. We'll throw that in the chat for anyone who's interested in looking at that. But do you know anything that I don't know about a tree map?
So there is not a public facing tree map at this time. There is a system that we use internally to track the trees, where most of the trees are mapped in that. But as Haley just mentioned and provided a link to our new horticulture page on the website, on there, we've just provided access to a number of databases that we've created that detail various aspects of the horticulture and the ecology of the park. But on there, you can find the plant list by area. So at least you can you can look for an area and figure out what trees are in that area. And I see how many trees are in the park approximately. And I just found that number to be, it's over 3,000 now. And I don't know, I was hoping to figure out the number of species, and I didn't get that, but actual planted trees, we're probably close to 3,500 now.
Yeah, I know you guys have been doing a lot of work with all the species and everything and getting these guides together. So I think it's so cool that those are available for everyone to see now. So if you liked this talk, please go check those out. All right, I think we got through almost all the questions. So I would just wanna thank everyone for joining us tonight, and especially again to Evelyn for doing this talk with us. It was really awesome, and all of the engagement here in the chat with questions and everything was really, really great too. So yeah, check out the stuff on the website. The Conservancy will be hosting a City Nature Challenge event this weekend. So City Nature Challenge takes place from Friday through Monday, and we have some more information about that we'll throw in the chat as well. But if you wanted to come out and make some observations with us on Sunday, we'll be near Pier 3 for most of the day. And we just have a few more resources that we'll put in the chat for you guys. I think that's all. Christina, did you have anything else that you wanted to say?
No, I think that's about it. If we have any families or teachers on tonight, I'm adding right now into the chat our plant learning unit. So each month, the education department has created a new educational themed unit. This month is plants, and next month will be on the waterfront. So we'll focus on the changing landscape along the East River. And we have, in addition to virtual events, in-person activities, we have a series of resources that you and your families can do at home.
All right, thanks everyone. Thanks Evelyn, if you have anything else you want to say.
Yeah, thank you. So to just think of one other thing in terms of insects that's fortunately not too active of, or not active currently of a problem in the park, but really something to be on the lookout for is spotted lanternfly, which is another, it's a new invasive pest to our area, and it's really showing up in a lot of areas around New York. So it's coming, and it unfortunately affects a wide variety of plants. It really likes Ailanthus tree, the tree of heaven, which is a widespread invasive. So it has plenty of food, but it's looking at this point to be a threatening new invasive for our area. So that's one that I would encourage people to look up, and if you see it, notify the DEC.
Oh yeah,
that's my last comment.
That would be an interesting thing to check on iNaturalist, which is the platform that
absolutely
takes place on. So if anyone, well, Christina put something in the chat about that, but definitely check out iNaturalist as well for things like that. I know that scientists a lot of times are checking that because it's a citizen science platform. Awesome. All right.
Absolutely wonderful resource.
And I guess that's it. So thank you guys.
Thanks everyone.